I'd like to welcome Maria Frost, the Transportation Director from the Kemper Development Group, to introduce our next presenter.
Thanks, Billy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Great. Well, today we have Bill Horrey with us. He's the Technical Director at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. He received his PhD in Engineering Psychology from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He has led many research projects in the areas of driver distraction, driver behavior and safety, human automation interaction, attention, and risk perception. Bill is the past chair of the Transportation Research Board's Vehicle User Characteristics Committee and the Publications Division of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, and has served on national and international committees and working groups related to driver safety. Today, he will discuss advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS, and automated vehicle technology. So that includes some of the nuances associated with the technology, the research demonstrating its benefits, and how we can best realize those benefits in today's world. And with that, I'll give it over to you, Bill.
Great. Thank you very much, Maria, and to Billy for the invitation. Hopefully you can see my slides here.
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, just as Maria mentioned, I'm the technical director of the AAA Foundation. We're over in the other Washington, in Washington, D.C., so I'm on the other coast right now. But just happy to be here to share some perspectives on advanced driver assistance systems and automated vehicle technologies. So just by way of overview, I'll provide just a couple of brief words about our organization. Talk through, what are we talking about here? ADAS, AVs, all these acronyms. What are they? How do they differ? I'll bring forward some of the research findings on the topic, and then we'll kind of get into discussion of some of the paths forward to realizing some of those benefits. And of course, hopefully there'll be some time at the end for some discussion, because again, I know the approach that I come into this issue with is probably differs a little bit from some of the folks in the audience. So I'd be interested in hearing some perspectives and some of the touch points or pressure points that you guys are facing in the work that you do. But first, before getting into technology, just a few words about the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. So although we're affiliated with the American Automobile Association, we are a sort of a separate independent organization. We are a nonprofit 501c3. We were founded in 1947, and we subsist mainly on generous contributions from AAA clubs, the Canadian Automobile Association, and from individual support. By virtue of being a 501c3, all of the work that we do is freely available to the public, and so we put all of that up on our website. And really, our mission is to identify traffic safety problems and to foster research that seeks solutions to address those issues. As you can see from the graphic on the side, emerging technology is one of our core areas when we think about our whole portfolio, but really we're balanced across all sorts of road safety issues. And so at any given point in time, we're probably fielding upwards of 25 different projects on all different topics related to traffic safety. It's not lost on this group here that vehicle technology is evolving at a very fast pace. And whatever vision of the future you might hold, or where we're heading, whether it's the disappearance of the steering wheel or family board games in the back seat while the car is driving, we really need to be mindful about how all this technology is impacting the safety and efficiency of the road system. And one challenge that has emerged, at least in kind of our experience here, is really how we talk about vehicle technology. And so just to kind of give a bit of flavor to that, so when we use terms like advanced driver assistance systems and automation, really there's so much that goes into that. What are we talking about? And even from this slide here is just a sampling of some of the systems that kind of comprise ADAS technology. And even this is really focused more on active systems, active safety systems. And so it's really not capturing the whole landscape here, but you have things like adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, parking assist, blind spot detection, and so forth. And, the challenge is when you're trying to get a handle on, the terminology and the scope really goes beyond just the number of systems and technologies. Adding to this confusion is the fact that some technologies go by different names from different auto manufacturers as well. And so there has been some efforts, and don't worry about the details of this slide, but I just want to kind of capture the fact that there have been some effort by different stakeholders to help clear up some of the confusion, in terms of the nomenclature, the terminology that we use to talk about these systems. These efforts continue to this day, and I don't think we've gotten a full handle on it, but I think the work is still ongoing. Added to all of this, we have to think about ADAS technology, all of these subsystems in the context of another term, which is vehicle automation, which has become very in vogue as well in discussions around the board. And so the Society for Automotive Engineers have tried to capture different levels of automation and sort of characterizing vehicle automation from a more general or functional perspective. And some of you have probably seen a chart like this, or maybe you've heard people talking about level 1 automation or level 2 automation and so forth. And really what they've tried to do with this framework is distinguish between, lower levels of automation in which, the vehicle is only undertaking some aspects of driving, all the way up to level 5, where the vehicle is really in charge of anything, of everything driving related. And I think it's really helpful to kind of draw a line right down the middle and kind of think just more generally that, the things that are kind of on the left-hand side, the things at lower levels of automation really are driver support features. The things that we often typically associate with ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, kind of fall into this level area of the plot. Whereas when you start to talk about autonomous driving systems or automated vehicle systems, you're starting to get towards the right-hand side. Now, I mentioned all of this. It's really a backdrop. It's to underscore really how broad and complex this area is, and that there's really a need to be very specific about what we're talking about, whether it's in support of different initiatives or even just talking about the features on a specific vehicle. We really need to try to break through and get beyond some of the generalities when we talk about very vague terms like ADAS and automation. Now, no matter how you slice it, the technology is coming, and so they estimate that about 95% of production vehicles will have ADAS by the year 2025. Now, this is going beyond sort of the more basic systems. So this is kind of more sophisticated ADAS systems. Given how long it takes for the US fleet to turn over and for new vehicles to kind of penetrate the fleet, they're estimating that it'll probably take until about 2045 to 2050 until about 90% of the US fleet will have ADAS. And so you got to think about this from a long-term perspective in terms of how long it's going to take some of these technologies to reach certain segments of the driving population. I think right now the average vehicle age on the road today, I think is somewhere around 12 years old. And so you think about the vehicles of 2012, what sorts of features did they have? And you can kind of think about that sliding window accordingly. But what is some of the impact of this technology? The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has done some really nice work that's been looking at some of the safety benefits of specific systems. So automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, blind spot warning, lane departure warning are just a few. And when they look at some of the insurance claim data and compare vehicles that have this technology equipped compared against the similar vehicle make and model that don't have those systems equipped, they see some significant crash reductions for those crashes in which the technology is designed to address. And so again, some very promising, well, not just promising, these are actually observed safety benefits that they're observing in some of the crash data that they have. And again, this is leveraging the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety's relationship with many insurers across the US and in which they can kind of gather data. The AAA Foundation ourselves, we've done some work looking at safety projections as well. And what we've done is kind of used some systems dynamics modeling, which really take into account a broad array of factors, including the progression of technology, like how it might be bundled on future vehicles, the rate at which it penetrates the market, as well as a number of other factors to kind of forecast how effective this technology might be at reducing fatalities, injuries, and crashes on our roadways. And so if you look at the figures on the right-hand side, you know, we kind of cast that in terms of the percent of crashes avoided for these different classes. And we also adopt some different forecasts based on, you know, really aggressive technology uptake, as well as maybe a more lackadaisical uptake. But I think the key is when you take these projections along with the work that IHS doing, this is all a lot of good news. I mean, ADAS and vehicle technologies stand to increase safety on our roads. But I think it's important to underscore that, you know, even when you look at these profiles here, this is not, you know, a panacea for all of the efforts that we need to take. You know, these will help take a chunk out of some of the crashes, but we really have to kind of continue to look at things from a system perspective to kind of realize more gains in safety. How do we actually get to, you know, vision zero, safe system approach, all that's all of those terms and approaches. How do we go that extra mile? There's also other benefits as well. You know, when we talk about congestion and traffic, you know, there stand to be some gains with ADAS technology and automated technology as well. I think it's important to note, though, when you think about ADAS, is that congestion relief and traffic calming are not necessarily in their wheelhouse. A lot of the systems are designed for a safety, you know, perspective, and so they don't necessarily bear directly on congestion. That being said, there are some systems that do stand to proactively address some of the congestion, and, you know, traffic jam assist, you know, the systems that can actively control spacing and headway and safety buffers in a traffic situation are one such example. But thinking just in terms of route planning and mapping, that's another area where I think ADAS technology can realize some great benefits, especially when that information is very robust and up to date in terms of closures, construction, traffic, and so forth. And so there's a lot of potential benefits here. There's probably a little bit less research and evidence regarding some of these benefits, or at least that as I'm aware of. But again, these are all possibilities when you think about the future. Coming back to this table just for a moment, I want to talk a little bit about some of the AAA Foundation's work that kind of falls within this middle area of the framework, where the technology can actively control aspects of the driving task under limited circumstances, but where the driver still has responsibilities to monitor the system, the traffic environment. And you can imagine this kind of creates an interesting dynamic as these technologies really start to fundamentally change the nature of driving. And so one of the things that we've seen is with these changing roles, there's a lot of potential and actual outcomes where drivers are misunderstanding the technology. And this is true even for drivers that own systems or own vehicles equipped with these technologies. We've observed in some of our work that drivers do not have a good, strong understanding of the purpose and function of some of these systems, and maybe more importantly, some of their limitations. Areas where the systems are not designed for, or situations that they can't handle. And we've observed in other research that a poor understanding of the system can actually translate to less safe situations. So, you know, scenarios where drivers are used inappropriately or are over-relying on them when they've kind of reached their limitations. And so these are kind of an unintended consequence of some of these technologies that fall into that level 1, level 2 range. And so really be trying to be mindful of what that looks like. We've also found that drivers have become increasingly complacent with the technology and are actually more likely to engage in distracting activities while using the technology. And so again, this is another unintended consequence that we're really trying to get a better understanding of, and try to find ways of kind of shoring that up through other avenues. I mentioned the confusion over some of the terminology just from a general sense. But we've also done some work that really looks at how important, branding can have on these sorts of systems. And so the words that are used, the tone of the information can have significant impact on drivers' understanding and their expectations about the technology. And so we ran an experiment a few years back where we found that even with the exact same system that has a different name, but where the emphasis of information is slightly altered to emphasize driver's responsibility or the system capabilities, can have a tremendous impact on user expectations. And so really this comes back to the trying to make sure the names are not misleading, and that drivers are really kind of developing kind of a very appropriate level of expectations concerning the technology. Now, all of this that I'm sharing with you in terms of this research is that we really need to be aware of unintended consequences with some of this technology, especially as we progress to some of the higher levels of automation. So just to kind of capture what we've talked about so far before moving on to the next section here, terminology, very key. I mean, especially with stakeholder discussions, really, what do we mean when we talk about ADAS? What do we mean when we talk about automation? And everything in between. We do know that the technology, in some versions of the technology, some of the systems have great potential to save lives. But as we kind of progress with higher levels of automation, we really do need to understand how the changing nature of driving is really going to change the nature, the roles and responsibilities of drivers, and how does that translate to performance and safety. And more importantly, how can we curb that? And we talked a little bit about branding as well. Coming back to kind of realizing some of the benefits, and so and I think this kind of hits on some of this groups as stakeholders and planners and so forth. So I'll talk about kind of 3 avenues, and of course this is just my own perspectives, and I'm sure there's a lot of other dimensions to this as well. So one of which is, how do we get ADAS into vehicles? A lot of this falls on the auto manufacturers. And so we've actually seen a lot of great commitment by the OEMs to invest in developing the safety technology and getting it into the vehicles. Automatic emergency braking is a great example of that, where up until recently we had a large consortium of auto manufacturers that made a voluntary commitment to make that a standard feature in vehicles. And that's just one example about getting that into, so kind of from the OEM's perspective. NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is another great entity that's kind of can drive the availability of features, systems in production vehicles. Some of that comes through the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. What technology or what equipment should be present, and in what form, with some of the boundaries and restrictions around that, guidance regarding it. The new car assessment programs, also a great avenue. At the moment, ADAS is not part of the STAR ratings, and right now they fall under recommended safety technologies. Not all ADAS, but just a subset of systems. But NHTSA is currently investigating how can they formalize that? How can they actually bring that into the STAR rating system? But at the moment, it's there as a recommended safety technologies, and so I think that's still a positive step forward. Outside of the NHTSA and OEMs, rulemaking across the board is one area where we can kind of see new avenues to get the technology into vehicles. Just as an example for a specific technology, Washington, D.C. recently passed legislation to implement intelligent speed adaptation on repeat offenders for speeding. And so that's one where a kind of a local jurisdiction can kind of try to regulate these systems or require these systems in certain contexts. And so that's another avenue that can be taken forward. Infrastructure support, I kind of come to this one as just sort of an enabler to getting the technology into vehicles, and really the availability of data, especially when it comes to that congestion piece, rerouting and so forth, making the data readily available so that systems can kind of use that effectively. I'll just wrap up quickly with these other pieces, getting ADAS equipped vehicles into the fleet. And so getting ADAS into vehicles is just the first step. Getting them into the fleet is another. So how do we get this technology out there quicker? There's different approaches related to incentivization to try to get that through. One such incentive is insurance benefits. There's a possibility, and depending on state rules and regulations concerning the setting of insurance rate, it's possible that ADAS equipped vehicles can realize some benefit of having that technology in there. And from a point of sale perspective, promotion of safety benefit to prospective buyers. And again, this comes back to NCAP, some of the rating systems, perhaps that are done by independent organizations like Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, really trying to get the vehicle buying public aware of the benefits, and maybe in a way that they would favor buying vehicles that are equipped with these features than ones that might not have those features. And the other piece of the puzzle is getting drivers to use the systems appropriately, the systems that they do have. And this comes back to really trying to clarify what the driver's role is with some of these systems, about system capabilities, limitations, and really drawing that line about what are driver assistance features versus automated driving systems. Some of that implicates good and solid system design, effective and accurate marketing, as well as informational materials, educational, and so forth. But really, this relates a little bit more to the higher levels of automation, as opposed to when you're talking about active safety systems like automatic emergency braking that just kind of have one purpose and aren't necessarily the sort of system that's engaged on a continuous basis. So with that, again, I just want to thank you for the time here. I hope there's some time for some discussion here, but I do want to point you to our website where a lot of the studies I talked about are freely available for your consumption, and happy to entertain some perspectives as we move forward here. So I'll stop sharing.
William, I got one quick one. We've got a bunch of individuals here from Washington DOT and people that advocate in the legislature and stuff like that. Are you working with the local entities, the local states on as we're building out our road system and as we're preserving our road system, and getting the best technologies that work for ADAS, whether it's lane markings, whether it's this, whether it's that. I mean, is that communication being conveyed, I guess?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of invested groups that are kind of having those discussions. And so the work that we do, a lot of what you're talking about, Billy, is kind of carried forward by AAA Incorporated, which is the national organization, and they kind of operate at the federal level, but also locally, the AAA clubs that are operating in your area. So in your case, AAA Washington and so forth would be advocating for either the technologies themselves, the evidence-based technologies that have been proven to be effective, as well as all of the infrastructure that goes along that is required to support those. And so, as you mentioned, lane markings being a very salient example, the ones that can actually support the effective use of some of the technology, absolutely. But yes, that's, at least from my vantage point, AAA, the AAA clubs, but also I know there's a lot of other stakeholder groups that are active in the discussion as well.
Thank you. Maria?
Bill, thank you so much for your presentation. We hear a lot about transportation demand management, mode shift, and pricing to regulate driver behavior, but we need to accommodate travel demand too. So can technology like ADAS improve lane capacity or congestion? And if so, assuming there's any data, which it sounds to me like there's not a whole lot of data, Is there a way to account for that technology in planning documents and transportation planning documents?
Yeah, that's the great questions, Maria. And I think, from and a lot of it comes down to kind of what element or what aspect of ADAS are we talking about. And so, as I mentioned, a lot of the technology is really not oriented to congestion and so forth. That being said, safety technology can have an indirect effect on travel. Obviously, if we're avoiding crashes, then there's going to be less disruption because of a crash occurring. And so I think that's one element. You're right. I think a lot of the potential benefits when it comes to those systems that could have an impact, like, traffic jam assist and, traffic, calming, or, the platooning of vehicles and all that. I think a lot of that is just based on, theory, simulations, and so forth. And so there are those data pieces out there, and whether or not that's the sort of piece that could effectively inform planning is kind of up for debate, as opposed to, real world, evidence that this is effective. But I think, I guess creative planners could possibly just come up with ways of, articulating, some of the benefits of crash reduction and how that could actually improve, traffic flowing through and so forth. But and certainly borrow from some of that other work as well. And hopefully that addresses your question. I mean, again, there's so many layers to this that it's hard to kind of come up with just like, here's a point-by-point guidance that road planners or transportation planners could take and implement in their region or territory.
Paul's in the room, here's got.
Hi, Billy Wallace of the Laborers, also Bill Seniors that call us. Question about car technology going forward and is AAA tracking this. We were able to get speed cameras and work zones a couple of sessions ago, and that will be implemented here around January. Once we get everything in place. Are car manufacturers looking at getting also the geofencing technology so we can get the early warning in all vehicles going forward? Is that something that you guys are tracking?
Yeah, well, I'm not up to the minute tracking, but I do know that geofencing is I think the answer is probably it depends on which manufacturer and what system. I know some of them are very invested in developing a very elaborate geofencing model that allows for more careful control and utilization of the systems that they're developing, whereas other manufacturers are a little bit less concerned with geofencing and are just kind of working more on the capabilities of the systems. And by this, I'm thinking more about sort of that level 2, level 3 sorts of technologies where the vehicle is a little bit more in active control of the driving task. But again, I know, from your question, there's geofencing from a more of a static perspective where it's just road types, whether it's, the systems can't be used on residential or arterial or so forth. And the one that's a bit more dynamic, which implicates, temporary things like construction or other things. And I think down the road, really all of these things need to work in simpatico with one another to be really effective, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if systems cannot be fully adaptive to kind of what's happening locally.
I appreciate that. We just have an extremely high number of knuckleheads here in the state that don't know how to enter a work zone. And we're just trying our damnedest to protect everybody there doing the work. So I appreciate that input. Thank you.
No, understand. And I think, we talk to people all over the country, and it's surprising how many knuckleheads people profess in each state. So
thank you.
Well, thank you for Maria for the introduction to Bill. Bill, thanks for the presentation. You got a great name. So, we've got a couple Billies in here, but, so